Okay,
You ready?
it's going. I'm pulling back.
Good morning. Welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow. Oh, the Dear Becky and Lizzy edition.
With my haphazard shirt, but this is my snow sweater because I thought it was gonna snow a lot tomorrow, and maybe it's not. And I don't know, but this is my comfy, cozy snow bunny sweater. So
it looks like a Christmas dress, but it's just pine trees and snowflakes.
So it could be a Christmas dress.
I call it a winter dress because we were discussing our show.
We were already starting to talk about things that really should be part of the Dear Becky and Lizzy, so we had to stop and start filming so we could capture it. No, this is a Patton's cable yoke sweater or something like that, and I'll put it in the notes. So, it's from a cable book that I have that I don't think is available anymore. I think when I looked this up, I'm totally swirling here. I think when I looked up the book that this came in, which is this little pamphlet that you could get at Joann's like 20 years ago.
Has 2 or 3 sweaters and
it's got like vests and hats and gloves, and it's all about cables, right? And it was probably $7 when I got it. I think when I tried to look it up on Amazon, it was like $50 because it's out of print. I mean, it's a little paperback poopy thing. So, don't buy the book because all the patterns, I think they're all Yarnspiration patterns now, and they're free. So look in the link, look on Ravelry for this. Cabled yoke this way, pick up stitches and go down, super pretty. It's the same front and back. I know I'm totally off topic right now, but I mentioned swirling. It doesn't have a drop down front or anything. There's no special shaping for that. Which means for me, it keeps wanting to ride up over the girls and bubble here, so I keep yanking it down. But it is quite pretty when it's lying nicely. Ta-da! So
we're skipping steps. We're not only swirling here.
I know. I still have to introduce myself. Stop it. No. Little out of sorts and whatever. We're gonna. There's many reasons to be out of sorts today, and I'm just gonna keep going with this. So, no, I'm wearing this. I am going to get around to introducing myself. Y'all just have to wait for it. Anticipation. No, I'm wearing this because we were supposed to, yesterday, there was the forecast. Okay. This makes sense after our introduction. I'm gonna wait. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in chilly and expecting snow, which segues into, in a second, this. Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm Liz. I'm the Minion there.
Back to what I was saying. I posted on social media because yesterday morning, the forecast was for 7 inches overnight tonight and 2 more inches during the day on Friday, which means we're not going to be here. And then later in the day when we checked, when you looked at it, it was it was 7 inches total. It was 5 inches overnight and 2 in the morning. And then when you look later, it was 6 inches overnight and 2 the next day. So 8 inches. It kept upping. And now local weather and the app on the phone says what?
Says 3 or 4 inches overnight and an inch and a half tomorrow. However, Western North Carolina, depending on where you live and where the snow is coming from, is weird.
Yes.
Lived all over. Normally it goes east, west.
If it comes east, west, it could break up over the mountains and just be like, ugh.
But Asheville gets it really bad if it goes that way.
Or the higher elevations will get something. Like
the last snowstorm that hit Brian's parents.
We got nothing.
It came from the east. We got nothing, and they got slammed.
They were on the other side of the mountains. Yeah. That's between us and it came from the west to the east. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. This way across the.
Yeah. The storm, we just looked at the radar. It's in Alabama.
It's kind of coming this way, but it's coming
swinging
this
up out
way.
of Texas, and it's dragging all that Gulf moisture with it.
We're always crap when it comes from the Gulf. If it's a hurricane during the summer, oh crap.
Yep. And any
Which
of the
means-
storms
sorry.
that start in Texas and work their way slowly and down and up, they hit us more than they hit Asheville or, you know.
We're in the valley for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. So we might be here tomorrow. We might not.
I mean, even if we only get like 4 to 5 inches, that's still a lot for this area. And yesterday, you know, in anticipation of today's storm, yesterday on the way home, I noticed all these white lines on the road, which means they've brined.
Yeah.
That's great if we're going to get freezing rain.
We're not sure what we're going to get
Yeah.
when. Like,
and if we get snow, I mean, at that point, it's like, you know, I'm trying to think of a good analogy of brining the roads and then getting heavy snow. It's like
it's just gonna melt the snow underneath and turn to ice,
turn to ice.
and then snow on
Yay.
top.
And then the snow scrapers, which we talked about before, are going to compact everything as they're trying to clear the
Yeah.
roads, and hot mess. So, and I kind of started, although for in terms of revenue, it will be poopy. I was kind of looking forward to getting snowed in tomorrow. So we'll see. We'll see. If we can get here, we'll be here. And we'll post on social media. Like, we don't film tomorrow. So this is your final warning of what could potentially happen tomorrow.
check social media.
Check social media, because we'll either be here and we'll post about it, or we won't be here and we'll post about it if we have power. I say me. If I have power.
I can still access the cellular data web stuff.
She can comment on a post. There won't be if you don't see any fresh posts from me tomorrow, from the official Sun Dragon whatchamahoozy tomorrow, you should go back and look at comments on the most recent posts and see
I
if
will
Liz
find
has posted.
the most recent post Rebecca posted, and I will comment. Hey,
She'll comment. Tonight, so this morning's posts were about my morning minute of meditation and stuff, so it could be on that, or it could be I took this picture before I left yesterday about a sweater I want to make, and it could be that. So it could be if I post this tonight.
we
We'll see.
swirled with sweaters.
I swirl
last
a
night.
lot, and yeah.
It was, I want to do a sweater. Should I use this yarn? And I'm like, no, you should use this yarn. And she went, yeah, I should use that yarn.
And it's a sweater, because we're going to talk about sweaters today on Dear Becky and Lizzy. So these swirlings actually are linked, kind of. So Jennifer Steingast just put out a new sweater. I can't even remember what it's called, but it has the color work at the bottom instead of the top, and it looks like, you know, a color changing contrast. And I was like, ooh, there's a color changing contrast I've wanted to do for a while, and maybe instead of sweater A, I'll do sweater B. And then I looked at the pattern. I think I've already bought the pattern. Maybe.
What? That's
Could
not
that be a thing? Oh, that's the only reason we could look at the chart. So yes,
yes.
I bought the pattern. This is the week of the gift card, because it's the first week of January. So most of the people who got gift cards for Christmas are coming in to spend them. Therefore, I have earned the right to start some new projects to make me feel better. Okay. And we love everyone who's spending their gift cards. That's fine. It's just, this is a fact of life in January. So, you know. Golden Fern. Golden Fern. Da, da, da.
It is super cool.
It's so cute. It's Jennifer Steingast. She's the one who designed the winter shawl I was wearing yesterday. But having the color work at the bottom, having some stranded color work at the bottom, I think is kind of genius, because when it's at the top, it's like, oh, fun stuff at the top, like this, right? And then you get to these parts and you lose the will to live because it's monotonous. But this is like, you have all the shaping up here, and then when you get to the losing the will to live part of the sweater, there's something to keep you entertained. So I'm excited to try it because it's different. But this, here, let me get the picture. It's not letting me. Oh,
so she did a
look, see that, and see how it looks like it's color changing.
She planned that.
It's 3 colors, and there's a fade in the stranded color work. I'm not the biggest fan of fades like that, like the Comfort Fade Cardi and Find Your Fade and stuff. A lot of people love it. I'm not
It's
a
a
fan.
personal preference.
It's a personal preference thing. It's not a one's better than the other or this is amazing for everybody. It's a personal preference thing. It's usually fades like that mean that you have like a couple of like a section in the solid color and a section where you're alternating colors. And this is like you're actually alternating strands in the stranded color work to kind of blend them a little bit. And it works really well with a tonal rather than a straight up solid. Um, and so it looks like it fades and changes colors, but it's actually 3 different colors,
So you were going to do it out of the Perth.
which changes colors on its own.
Yeah. And
This is a combo that I'm going to make a sweater with some point.
and I was like, that will look awesome. But the goldy color, you should use the burnished, which she's always wanted to use. And she could use it with the dark, but the denim is also a color she's always wanted to use.
And can you imagine, like, okay, that at
So
the bottom in just this.
it's
And I was thinking, like, we thought, like, she first suggested that this is navy, by the way, not black. That would be pretty too.
Yeah.
But the tonals together, because like the top of this is a tonal blue. Look how pretty that is. It's not quite this denim, but it's really awfully close, right? So I just started the striped sweater, but I really want to do this too. And I have at least 3 other sweaters on needles. So
not a
I'm not even talking about the shawls. This is a problem.
So
I could have a problem.
our dear Becky and Lizzy
Segue. We
is
have,
about sweaters.
yes, there was a question about blocking and superwash wool, and if we have time, we'll address that. But we have other dear Beckys and Lizzies that kind of have to do with blocking. So, and we did talk to the person who asked that question during knit night. So, email us or write us or comment here if you want to know more about blocking, and we'll revisit if we don't do it today.
We did a Becky and Lizzy on blocking.
Yes. And we had
Wow.
someone who wanted to do a blocking lesson, and I'm not sure if I got back to them because life has been insane. So pester us. It's not that we're trying to neglect anyone. We're just having trouble keeping track of everything.
A lot going.
What's the Dear Becky Lizzy?
Dear Becky and Lizzy, I understand the term positive ease when reading a sweater pattern, but I'm not sure how to apply it when I pick a size to knit. Do I take my measurements and add the positive ease and then pick the size? Or do I assume the positive ease is already added into the size and listed in the pattern? Help. Positively confused in the pandemic.
I'm listening. Positively, well,
Or
positively puzzled in the pandemic. We got a couple different names. Excuse me. I was gonna try drawing pictures. Ooh. So positive ease, positive and negative ease is, it's an issue. You know, it's lingo. I've actually had people who write patterns who misidentify this. So, because I'm drawing this on the spot, it's gonna look weird, probably. No one really has an hourglass shape like this, but hey. So, here's my little person. We have curves. We don't have hourglass curves like that. That's like Marilyn Monroe right there. But you know, this will work. So, and usually when you're trying to figure out a sweater size, you measure the biggest part of you up top, your bust, you know, torso, bust, whatever. For me, it's pretty sizable. I got the girls, right? And the rest of me is not as big as the girls.
And
Well,
I have
tummy's almost as big as the girls.
I have the opposite problem. My waist is bigger than my bust.
You have what we would call a pear shape.
Hair,
Kind of.
it's weird.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing a crop sweater, I measure bust, but if I was doing a full sweater, I'd have to alter the pattern to make it almost triangles anyway. Yeah.
And so like for a sweater, I'm gonna draw a really basic sweater here. When we're talking about positive ease, that just looks inappropriate, but you know. um okay. So when we're talking about positive ease, we're talking about how much you want to add, how much extra room you want to have is positive ease. And then some sweaters will have negative ease. And people are like, but how can you go negative? You have your bust size. A negative, I think we've discussed this a little bit before. A negative ease sweater would be one that's supposed to be a little clingy.
Or a lot clingy.
Or that would kind of hug you. And some people will love that. And I know a lot of people who wouldn't like that. You know, like
most people want a sweater in general, want a sweater with at least an inch or two of positive ease.
Just like room to wear a shirt underneath it.
Yes.
Maybe. You know, there are some sweaters that are designed though to be kind of slinky or to be like to accentuate your figure.
What a couple years ago there was that sweater dress in was it in Pom Pom or Vogue or one of them?
Both.
And like it was almost like a tube, but it sucked it. It had ribbing, and it just.
And that kind of, if you want something like, especially with ribbing, that is going to again accentuate your figure, you don't want it to have a lot of positive ease because it's going to look like a sack on you.
Yeah.
And some women's sweaters will actually have come in and out. You know, they'll have slight shaping, so they won't be big and boxy. Like big and boxy is a style. But some sweaters you don't want to be big and boxy because they don't look good. Some look wonderful and some don't. And sometimes it's in the design what it's supposed to do. I've joked with people on knit nights and other things before that it's not always about hiding things though, because some of us don't like our figures that much, you know, or we think we've got the muffin tops or the this or that. And sometimes making a big oversized sweater isn't flattering. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's an awesome comfy thing, and sometimes it's not. One of the biggest takeaways from the show I used to religiously watch of What Not to Wear on TLC.
Like I break all those rules.
You know, one of the rules when they would take someone who hides in their clothing and say, no, it's not about like losing weight. It's not about this, that, or that. It's about finding clothes that flatter you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fit properly.
Which means maybe buying a bigger size, even though the number might make you go, oh no, I can't wear that. But you look thinner in it because you bought something that actually fits you. You know, you look better. I mean, thinner, thicker, you know, like those words are loaded, right? But you feel more confident because you're in something that flatters your body. And I feel like the same thing can be said about a sweater.
Yeah.
Is sometimes your success or failure with a sweater is not so much about your knitting abilities. It's about picking the right size. And then there's making sure the gauge is right. There's so many levels to it. But it shouldn't be overwhelming. It's taking it one thing at a time. So we'll talk about the positive and negative ease today.
So the one of our knitters, she's very petite, very, and most of the sweaters she looks at, the smallest finish size is still more positive ease than she can wear, or than she feels comfortable wearing, because she's very petite. And then you've got people like me who I take a sweater that's like, it's supposed to have 5 to 6 inches of positive ease.
Which again means overall it should be 5 to 6 inches bigger than your bust
chest
size. Yeah.
And I'm like, hold my beer. And I go up needle sizes, and I mean, it's big and it's drapey, but I've customized them to be short to fit over my skirts, and I just like them.
And you know what
big.
You're comfortable
and
with.
I know what I'm comfortable with.
Or what looks good on you, right?
I want the oversized because, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes half of what looks good on someone is what they're comfortable in or what gives them confidence.
Yeah.
Right? And that comes together as the complete package. So for you, it could be having a little bit of positive ease, a little bit of room in there is great. Or for you, it could be, well, I want to show off my girls, so I want a little bit of negative ease.
Well, and
That's great.
You've done like with the patterns, they'll say, here's your bust size. And then sometimes they'll have finished size. Sometimes
But
they're
yeah,
like,
we have to discuss that. Yeah.
if this is your bust size, add this many inches for the
Mhm.
positive ease. And you've looked at patterns and you've been like, okay, here's my bust size, but I don't want to go up this many inches, so you'll make a size
yeah,
down.
because my frame is not, my shoulders, my waist, give or take, but the rest of me, like when I would shop in a store, most of me would at one point would be a medium in the general sizing of things, but the girls aren't. The girls are a large. But if I try on something that's a large, it's huge everywhere else.
Yes.
It's like falling off my shoulders. But I'm at least comfortable here. So it's, do I take a little bit more tightness here and have the rest of it fit nicely? And for a cardigan, that's fantastic. That's no question. I know what size to make. Or do I want the comfort here and know the rest of it's going to be a little roomy? So that's a debate people have to make. So that's why, honestly, if a pattern, so Liz brings up the point of, some patterns will say, if your bust size is this, you should make this size. And some patterns will say, the finished size of this piece is X, and you should have so much positive ease. It's designed to have this much positive, like 2 inches, or between
Or
4 to
15.
6 inches, or 50 or 10. Like the Ready Set Raglan book, most of them say designed with 10 inches of positive ease, which is huge. That's like 5 inches on either side, kind of.
But all their models are wearing sweaters
not
that have
necessarily
2 to 4 inches positive ease.
So I usually have to kind of thread the needle on that. But so I might say, okay, according to the girl's size, I think the last time I measured that, trying to figure out this latest pattern, it's like 45 inches. So according to that, I should make, the extra large size. But I think the large size is going to be more comfortable everywhere else. It means, like this one, it's a little clingy around the girls, but I'm going to be happier with everything else. Now, this sweater is a little tight all over because I made it when I was skinnier, but I still like to wear it, which means it just, the girls pull up. Like I often have to make my torso length longer. That's a whole nother issue. I often have to knit my torso a lot longer than the pattern says, because of the girls will pull everything up. I remember once making sweaters from this like vintage fashions little sweater book, and I should have known from the pictures when they were all in little panties with the sweater on that they were kind of meant to be crops. But I followed the instructions diligently because I was a new knitter. And then the girls made it shorter, and oh my gosh, I couldn't wear any of them unless I had like a longer layer underneath. And a lot of my sweaters, when I show them off to you on here, sometimes they are short enough, like this one, the t-shirt sticks out underneath it. But I'm kind of getting away from the negative positive ease thing a little. So let's return to
it. Well, I think design, like if you know the designer, you can kind of, like, you've made a couple by the same designer. I've made a couple by the same designer. Once like you can kind of, once you do one, you understand how that designer throws positive ease in, and
so oftentimes there's a decision you have to make. So let's say I am about to tackle the striped sweater, or I've just started doing the collar on it, right? But I had to make a decision last night about what size to make. The Stripes by Andrea Mowry, and there are 10 sizes here. There are 10 sizes, which you can't see that at all. Even that you can't really see. Okay, but there are 10 sizes, and it says, see the notes sections for helpful tips about picking the right size. I'll go look at that in a second. But just looking at this info sheet page, it's really important to pay attention to the language. Like we were just mentioning, I want to come back to it because it was kind of caught up in the middle of everything, of if the pattern says bust size or finished bust size, because usually that language is really indicative of what you need to do. Some will have both. And a lot of them, though, and this one only says finished bust circumference. So size circumference, it's got a little picture. Circumference means all the way around, not just across the front, all the way around.
The biggest part of your
biggest
bust.
part. Don't measure the smallest part because you'll be in trouble.
And don't go off your bra size.
No, because that often is somewhat related to the rib cage smallest part.
Yeah.
Like that number part of your bra.
Yeah.
Is not the biggest part of you. Because I'm not a 45 something in bra language, speak, whatever. Yes. So I will sometimes measure myself, but it's really better to have someone else measure you, first of all. Because if you're holding your arms up and trying to wrap the measuring tape around you, it changes. So my 45 is actually from me trying to measure myself. And I just kind of know I've done it enough that I'm okay. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. But having your arms down at your sides, like doing this and doing this, you're going to get different measurements, which is why it can be really helpful, if possible, if someone else is at home, to have someone else measure you. If you come in here, we'll measure you. Even with the pandemic and masks, I won't stand face to face with you. I'll stand around the backside of you, but I can still measure you, masks on. Okay. So finished bust circumference means not what you measure, but what the piece will measure when you're done with it. So that's important.
And generally blocked.
Yeah. Whether or not you're blocked. I have several sweaters that haven't blocked. Oh well. But yeah, after blocking, and often the gauge will say after blocking, and that's a whole nother discussion we've kind of had in another day. We'll revisit if you need. So that's important to pay attention to, because if it says your bust circumference, basically, there's no finished there. It might be, if your bust is this size, we recommend you make this the second one in, or the third one in, or whatever. But this says finished bust circumference, which means this is the size the sweater, if everything works out right, should come out to be. Plan ahead. And she has the note under this. Recommended ease is plus, so positive, 2 to 6 inches or so many centimeters. And she said, okay, the sample is shown, it's size 3 on a 34-inch bust with 6 inches of positive ease. So she did, so if I look up here at size 3, 1, 2, 3, the third size in says a finished circumference of 40 inches. But the person wearing it, who is Andrea Mowry, has a 34-inch bust. So again, 6 inches. Hey, the math works out there. So this picture is of 6 inches of positive ease. It's also a little short croppy thing. I don't do those because it shows off my muffin top. Liz likes to do those because she has her skirts. There's different reasons, right? So, so I measured myself last night, and with the 45, it could be a little less because of how I was doing it myself. I should have had Brian measure me, but that would have been a whole thing. So I didn't. And if I look up here, we've got 34.25 is size 1, 37 is size 2, 40. Size 4 is 46 inches. Possible. And then size 5 is 50.5 inches. So there's a big gap there, right? There's like a 4-inch gap there, which is, that different.
I would probably still do the same size that we discussed doing, just because I want the extra. In fact, I probably want more than the extra. So
it says 2 to 6 inches. Now again, what I said before of my girls are bigger than everything else means I could do the 46-inch and probably be okay with the rest of me, but be a little tighter here. And then the other option was the 51, which gives me about 5, maybe 6 inches, depending on, how it comes out, which is a little roomier. I'm doing the 50-inch one. I'm doing size 5. Part of that is it's going to be easier. It's the first one in bold. It's going to be easier for me to find the instructions. But the other thing is, because it's striped, and I can decide how big or small I want these stripes to be. I wasn't so sure I wanted tight stripes across the girls. Looser stripes across them, something that's not as form-fitting and accentuating the girls. For me personally, is what I want to do. There might be some people out there who want to accentuate the girls, and you go with your bad self. Absolutely. But that's, again, it's a personal choice. So it's paying attention to that language. I have seen one sweater. There was an easy raglan bulky pullover that I've helped a couple knitters with. She talked about negative ease in hers, but I think she meant positive ease. So be careful, because not all designers, and not that she's a bad designer, but some people get the lingo
And the
switched.
sweater pattern was a great pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Just she kept saying negative ease instead
but the instructions, it said negative ease, but then it said take your bust size and add, and it's like, that's not negative, that's positive. Negative is thinking, and positive, it's kind of like when you're doing gauge and your gauge is off, and it's like, do I go up needles or down needles, and the brain wants to flip it. And I think her brain might have flipped it. We're not going to use names because, I think overall it was a really great pattern. So, but pay attention when it talks about that. I mean, that means it's one of those, shocker, read the pattern. Because Andrea Mowry in this says, see the notes section for helpful tips on picking the right size for you. And if you just barrel through, kind of like I did last night, I never do that. Barrel through. But do as I say, not as I do. Because
we've both done Andrea Mowry patterns before, and she has awesome tips about blocking in the notes section, and Rebecca never sees them. I was like, so Andrea Mowry says, if you're going to do this, you can do it this way and it'll work. And Rebecca went,
I saw that. I went back to on the night shift and reread it because I was just finished it.
Yeah.
And, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what Liz is talking about with the blocking thing. Ha ha, I never saw it before. On the notes page, she says to pick your size, measure around your full bust, then add or subtract the desired ease to that number. Pick the size closest to from the finished bust circumference on page 2 details. And she says plus or minus, like this is her general notes page. So she's like, add or subtract for the desired ease.
So some people might want a very tight fitting sweater.
And
you can go and,
Yes. And she says go back to the other page and follow the instructions there if you're not sure what to do. So yeah, and there's all these other really great notes here, but they're not relevant to what we're talking about right now. So anyway, but I'm really excited to be making this sweater. Yay! So, but that's the thing. Can we look back at the puzzled in the pandemic? I want to make sure we've hopefully kind of addressed that. That's the thing about picking a sweater size.
It's do I take my measurements and add the positive ease and then pick the size, or do I assume positive ease is already added to the size and listed in the pattern?
It's the language the pattern uses.
It depends on it depends on the pattern, which sucks, but because there is no universal master plan for writing patterns. Everybody gets to decide how they're going to write patterns.
Yeah.
If you like a designer and you'll
get comfortable with
their language, but if you go to a different designer, they're going to have completely different language.
You absolutely hope that they're going to use that language of bust size or finished bust size. And one of the ways you can double check that, if it just says bust size and you're like, okay, is that my bust size or the finished garment's bust size? Again, hopefully they've got a diagram somewhere in that pattern that will have a picture of a sweater, kind of like this, without the pluses and minuses drawn in a weird place on that. And hopefully you can tell, because if the page that says bust size matches perfectly with, it'll be a picture like this, and they'll often have, like a number, like straight across and a number, or straight down and a number. If those numbers match, or if the straight across number is exactly half of what the bust size, which is the circumference, then what they're listing on that first page is the finished, even if they didn't use those words. But I often, the good pattern writers I find will use the word finished bust size or finished bust circumference, like we just saw on Andrea Mowry's. And that means that's the sweater. That's not you. That's not your measurement. That's the sweater's measurement. And if they don't say how much positive ease the sweater should have or negative ease, then you get to decide. Take your bust measurement. And if it says finished bust measurement, and doesn't tell you about positive or negative ease, wants you to figure it out for yourself, then you get to do that. You get to say, okay, the finished garment is going to be this size. My bust measurement is this other size. What do I want to do? Do I want more room or less room? That's, to me, that's one of the brilliant things about being able to knit your own sweater. Like you said for yours, it's like, I want it to have a lot of positive ease. I love the big boxy sweaters. You get to tailor it to be your personality and to fit you.
And they're like the ranunculus. I love the ranunculus pattern because she does, if this is your bust size, she has like bust size A through C is on the first sheet. And then for the bigger bust sizes, she has separate sheets, which give you the instructions on how to do it. The instructions.
I love it.
But then she also, some people like more shaping with the darts and the, you know, she also gives you those instructions. Cool. So if you're like, hey, I'm a big girl, but I got a smaller waist, you can put darts and she tells you where to put the little darts where it shrinks it in.
You can engage with the level of complexity you want to engage in. If you're like, I got this, I want this shaping, then dive in and do it. If you're like, I don't want to take on that level of craziness and going back and forth in the instructions, then don't do it. It's okay. So, I mean, that's one of the cool things. And we have people who say, well, I've done socks or I've done this. I've never done a sweater. I'm like, you've done increasing and decreasing. You've done dishcloths with textured patterns. You're totally ready for a sweater. Like, it's not that far of a leap. If you can follow instructions on something that sounds simpler, you can probably follow the instructions for a sweater too, just fine, no problem.
Sleeves are equivalent to making knee highs.
There you go, right? So
you know,
besides losing the will to live because it takes a lot of time to knit them, like for people who do teeny tiny socks but they've never made a sweater or vice versa, I'm like, we had someone once who asked, like, socks or a sweater, which one should I do first or which one is more complicated? I'm like, they have
their own.
They're both going to take a while, depending on how fast or slow you knit, and they both have weird instructions to follow at some point.
And you can make a sweater out of any weight yarn, depending on how long your will to live is.
Yeah, this would be my first fingering weight sweater.
We'll see where her will to live is.
The striped sweater is sport weight. I'm making it out of such a light sport weight, it's almost fingering weight too. So for me, it's all what is keeping me entertained. If it's keeping me entertained, I won't lose the will to live on it. I mean, the sorrel I'm making right now, I'm in the straight knitting section. I might lose the will to live.
I prefer worsted
and that's
weight
DK.
or thicker.
Yeah.
Just because if I'm going to wear a sweater, I want.
My chunky one, the striped one, I banged out. I'm sorry,
I have done fingering weight sweaters. My ranunculus is a lace weight sweater on a size 10 needle.
Does it count? Sure, it counts.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But I'm not going to do fingering weight on it too.
They've started the cement mixer outside, so it's a little noisy for us. I can feel it in my chair. So, and it's probably a good time for us to get ready. We have an appointment coming in 10-15 minutes. Yes. So I don't want to short shrift the superwash merino blocking question. But I will say on that, because it was someone saying, I've never done wool. I've heard rumors about superwash wool and what happens when you block. I will make a total disclaimer about when you ask questions or when you do research on certain fibers and what's going to happen when you block it, like cotton, superwash merino, wool, things like that. This person said they found answers on all sides of the spectrum. And the reason I think they found that, the reason you might find all kinds of different competing advice is you have different constructions of yarn from the same fiber. So not all fiber is going to behave the same. To some extent, it might. I mean, all superwash merino, in theory, because of the name, can be put in the washing machine, but it still might behave differently when it's in there or when it's in the dryer. Some things will go through the dryer just fine. My socks will tighten up in the dryer every time, and some people's stuff has done something crazy in the dryer. And some cottons will say they're machine washable and some won't, and that could be on how finely constructed the yarn is. Like it's hard to say that one thing, like all cottons do this and all superwash merinos do that.
I say it a lot with felting. If knitting and crocheting are physics, felting is quantum physics, and it's kind of
String
the
theory.
same.
Oh.
It's kind of the same thing.
Mhm.
It dabbles into quantum physics
Yeah,
for some
it's like
blocking and machine washability, and
it's some of it's theoretical and some of it is you don't know what's going to happen every time, and unpredictability and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
like
And
the normal world is this, and it can get weird.
I mean,
sometimes.
there's some reliability to knitting and crocheting, like test your gauge. And in theory, for the most part, if your gauge swatch works out to be this size, your finished product will come out the right size. But I have seen posts on Knit and Chat and other places where that didn't work. And that could be your tension changes with your mood or your stress levels or other things. And for other people, it's consistent no matter what. And that's personal. And some people can pick up a pattern and choose the needles that it says to use, and every time it's fine. And other people, it's different every time. And sometimes that's the yarn, because we've had discussions before too about like the sport weight yarn I'm using is a very different thickness than other sport weight yarns we have in the shop, but
Well,
they're both labeled sport.
And we've had people comment about they've bought superwash yarn and it felted because it's not supposed to, or it can
Not
go
supposed
through,
to,
not
but-
supposed to, but it did a little bit or a lot,
which is why even with the predictability of some amount of knitting and crocheting and etc., when someone comes in and says, will this work, or will this happen, or is this really safe for the washing machine, or will this be enough yarn for this project, I'm like, most likely.
some yeah, there
I don't want to make promises I can't keep.
it's is it a controlled environment,
Mm-hmm.
or were there other things in play? Like one of our knitters was trying to tighten up a hat for her husband, and her nighttime meds came into play. Like it was not a controlled situation, and it ended weird, but not bad, just weird.
That's when you learn to fudge and you learn to let go.
And so, like, did your laundry fairy at home just scoop everything up and throw it into a hot wash? Or did you make sure it went into the little bag and it's on cold and gentle and, like quantum physics?
Yes.
It gets funky.
We just had the 10-minute warning of our next appointment pop up on the, our first appointment pop up on the little calendar reminder thing right above my head. So we need to wrap up so we can go help people today on our last day before. We might be gone for a while. Who knows? Because there's maybe more snow on Monday. Which could affect Tuesday.
I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. So anyway, watch social media. Because if I lose power, I won't have the ability to even make a video to tell you what's going on. But watch social media. If I post, you'll find out what's going on. If I don't post, Liz will tell you what's going on with tomorrow and the weekend. And snuggle up with a good book or some good knitting or crocheting over the weekend if you're local, and we do get slammed with snow. So we love you. We miss you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That whole long-time listener, first-time caller, subscribe. Because it helps you to know when we have videos, and it helps us with our numbers, because that's a thing apparently.
Tomorrow night, if everybody has power, join us for
If I have power, we will have sit and stitch, virtual sit and stitch, 6 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. If you have a pressing question you would like us to babble on about for a good 45 minutes, you can write us at Dear Becky and Lizzy, Sun Dragon Art and Fiber, 35 South Broad Street, Brevard, North Carolina 28712.
Or email me, Liz@sundragonartandfiber.com.
If it's not a Dear Becky and Lizzy, please email me, Rebecca@sundragonartandfiber.com, or fill out the contact form on sundragonartandfiber.com. All right. Regardless, hopefully, again, if the weather complies, we will be here on Tuesday. If another snowstorm rolls in, I don't know why that's a tongue twister for me. If you don't see anything from us on Tuesday, it's because weather kept us from getting in here. If we have power, we could do a side-by-side or something. We'll try. We will try to keep you entertained. Okay.
Will we finish our projects that we started? Stay tuned.
I don't think I'm going to finish anything this weekend, but how many more will I start? Bye!
Because that's not a thing.
So not a thing. Oh, have a good day, everybody. Stay safe.